tend to filibuster and read children's books. But in other news today, there were growing expectations of the possibility of a really big event happening in New York today. The first face-to-face meeting between an American and Iranian head of state since the hostage crisis of 1979. In the lead up to today, administration officials made it clear that any meeting would be on the margins, a handshake in a hallway perhaps, nothing official, no photo op. According to a senior administration official, we did not have any plan for a formal bilateral meeting here. We indicated the two leaders could have had a discussion on the margins if the opportunity presented itself. But it was not to be today. The Iranians got back to us, the senior administration official said. It was clear that it was too complicated for them to do that at this time, given their own dynamic back home. So, this highly anticipated unofficial meeting, which had already started to make some Republicans and even some Democratic lawmakers fret about President Obama moving too fast toward the new, comparatively moderate Iranian leader, that meeting never happened. Because at least, according to one anonymous White House source, the Iranian regime wasn't quite there. But aside from those optics, a great deal did happen, moving the two countries forward toward the possibility of actual direct face-to-face negotiations over Iran's nuclear program.
Conciliatory words will have to be matched by actions that are transparent and verifiable. We are encouraged that President Rouhani received from the Iranian people a mandate to pursue a more moderate course. And given President Rouhani's stated commitment to reach an agreement, I am directing John Kerry to pursue this effort with the Iranian government. The roadblocks may prove to be too great, but I firmly believe the diplomatic path must be tested.
President Obama's speech did not include the almost perfunctory phrase of all options are on the table with respect to any military options in preventing Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. That was a notable softening of tone. And for his part, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani said he listened carefully to President Obama's speech, and President Rouhani offered his own fig leaf of sorts.
صورت عزم سیاسی رهبران آمریکا و خودداری از دنبال کردن منافع گروه‌های فشار جنگ طلب می توانیم به چارچوبی برای مدیریت اختلافات.
Rouhani's tone was noticeably sharper than his very conciliatory op-ed from last week. But then again, he, like President Obama, had a domestic audience to speak to as much as an international one. Joining me now is Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Democrat from California, and a U.S. representative to the United Nations. You were there today at the UN General Assembly. Were you at all surprised by Rouhani's tone, given how much it seemed as if both countries were opening a kind of back-and-forth approach to each other towards some kind of sit-down negotiations?
Chris, I was not really surprised at his tone, but what's important is that the president, our president, gave a magnificent speech calling for a opening diplomatic initiative. We know it's going to be very tough, as we, of course, heard today. But I think we need to applaud President Obama for really ensuring the rest of the world that he's going to take that step, and it's going to be slow. But I've offered the legislation for many years now calling for a special envoy as it relates to Iran, and also, you know, getting rid of this no contact policy that we have, and so we have not done that yet, and so I think this
Explain
is a
the
major
no contact policy.
Well, they're in law. We are not to really have bilateral contacts with the Iranian government. I know we've done back channel contacts and what have you, but officially the bilateral, which is what, again, my legislation would call for, is that I believe that in order to seek global peace and security, reduce the threat of Iran achieving and getting a nuclear bomb, that we have to have bilateral talks between the highest levels in our government.
The overtures from the new Iranian government, the president's overtures back, have gotten some Congress members worried. This is a letter from Senator John McCain and Chuck Schumer, Democrat. We respectfully urge that any diplomatic outreach to Iran re-emphasize the United States will not allow Iran to acquire nuclear weapons capability, and that any relief from crippling economic sanctions on Iran will only be provided if Iran takes meaningful and verifiable actions to halt its nuclear activities. Do you think there is going to be growing political pressure on the president to not make sure that he moves too quickly towards diplomacy?
I think there will be, but I also think there will be growing numbers of voices in our own country calling for a strong diplomatic effort, because no one wants Iran to have a nuclear bomb. We all, in my bill, we call it non-proliferation legislation. We do not believe the world should have any more nuclear weapons. We need to disarm, and that's the only way we're going to achieve global peace. So, you know, we're going to see both sides, I think, digging in, and the debate's going to continue, but I think what's important is that the president did open the door, and we'll see what happens, but that's the important part.
Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu releasing a video message to the UN General Assembly. Take a listen.
Israel would welcome a genuine diplomatic solution that truly dismantles Iran's capacity to develop nuclear weapons. But we will not be fooled by half measures that merely provide a smokescreen for Iran's continual pursuit of nuclear weapons. And the world should not be fooled either.
Last year, Netanyahu famously got up before the UN General Assembly with a drawing of a bomb. Is Israel an obstacle to a diplomatic settlement between the U.S. and Iran?
I visited Israel many times, and of course, Israel, quite naturally, should be concerned about Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon, just as we should be. And so I believe, as I said earlier, we have to take every step we can to make sure that non-proliferation and the nuclear capability for a bomb is not there. And so we have to ensure that what the president, our president, the steps that he is taking right now succeed. And that's going to be a tough road
Are they an obstacle? Is Israel an obstacle?
I don't believe Israel is an obstacle. I believe that the Middle East would be a much safer place if we reduce the tensions and really insist that nuclear weapons become not the weapon of the world. That is an extremely important part of our foreign policy that we need to embrace very quickly.
Congresswoman Barbara